great honor to introduce our distinguished lecturer today, Elisabeth André. Elisabeth is a professor in the computer science department at the University of Augsburg, and she is also the chair, meaning director, of the Center for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. So it's a quite large entity that is definitely bigger than the lab. It includes many postdocs and PhD students and grad students. So it's a quite important entity in Augsburg. And Elisabeth is a pioneer in human-centered artificial intelligence. She started doing this way before it became very popular, has been popular. It's a term that has been quite on the mind of people in the last few years, but Elisabeth has been doing that for, although she's very young, some decades. And she has been doing in this space, she has been doing pioneering work in the space of multimodal human agent communication, socially intelligent and conversational agents, affective computing, human robot interaction, and these are just some of a few of the things that she has been doing. Most recently, it's a very strong, interesting work on explainable artificial intelligence with applications to domains such as education and health. Elisabeth was elected in the Chi Academy in 2017, and she has, I have to pronounce this, the Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz Prize. She got it in 2021. This is, I would say, the most prestigious research funding prize in Germany, with the prize being 2.5 million, and it's given to only 10 researchers every year in Germany. So this is a major accomplishment. In 2013, she was elected a fellow of the European Coordinating Committee for Artificial Intelligence. And in 2019, she was named one of the 10 most influential figures in the history of AI in Germany. So these are just a few of the things that Elisabeth has, or accolades that pertain to Elisabeth. I won't continue because I think it's much more interesting to listen to her talk. So thanks, Elisabeth, for being here. And without further ado, let's go on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christina, for the nice introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great honor to speak here, and it's also a great pleasure, of course, not just because of the excellent research here, but also because of the nice surroundings. So today I will talk about the potential AI offers to analyze and to generate social and effective signals. And there's not only a benefit for human agent interaction, which you might somehow expect, but also a lot of benefit for a human interaction. So first of all, I would like to give a very brief introduction by means of images on Augsburg University and Augsburg. So you can see on top our campus, which is quite nice. And you see also a picture of the city of Augsburg. Several centuries ago, actually, it was a city like Rome and Paris. And at that time, Munich did not exist, but this has changed, of course. And Augsburg is a great place, but if you should come to Augsburg and not like it, you can go along the romantic road to other nice places, for example, to the Cinderella Castle in Füssen. And if that's not enough, you can also use the Via Claudia. Actually, the old Romans also liked Augsburg, and there is a long road from Augsburg going to Italy, actually, where Christina comes from. And that's just to actually create some incentives to visit. So my research can be summarized, or my research objective. So we want to generate or achieve social resonance in human agent interaction. What is that? It's lively autonomous behavior in interaction that is perceived as responsive, empathic, adaptive, cooperative, and most importantly, the real-time dynamics of this interplay. It's also very difficult to achieve. And I think the idea is nicely portrayed by the artistic image on the right. So the robot looks like a machine, but you can see that the robot is not just serving coffee. It does not just have a function. It also tries to establish a connection to the woman by sharing eye contact. So to summarize, behavior is very important, maybe even more important than appearance. So the field affective computing social signal processing might appear somehow exotic to some computer scientists here because it looks more like a psychological topic. But we even got our own journal, which is called IEEE Transactions on Effective Computing. And the journal got a very high impact factor. It's over 10. And IEEE actually announces it as the second most impactful journal in computer science. So just to encourage you, there are many people here working in this area to submit to the journal. So the agenda of my talk is as follows. I will first present some examples of socially interactive agents we developed over the past years. Then I will talk about the analysis of social and affective behaviors and also explain some strategies to you how to improve the performance. And we do not only have to analyze social and affective behaviors, we should also make sure that the behavior of the machine or the processes of the machine are transparent to the human. So I will also talk about explainable AI in the context of social and affective behavior analysis. And when I started with my research, I worked on virtual agents. Then I moved to Augsburg, and then I said, okay, maybe I should do something different. Maybe I should now analyze signals and not just generate behaviors of virtual agents. But now with the AI advances, I figure out I can use similar techniques to generate social and affective behaviors. And so I can come back to my original roots. Of course, ethical issues are very important in this context, and I will also discuss this. So first, some examples of socially interactive agents. So we are currently running a project where we develop an agent that is supposed to provide aftercare management and monitoring for people suffering from depression who have been discharged from hospital. So our intention is not to replace the human therapist. This would really raise some ethical issues. But there's evidence when the people leave the hospital, they have a very hard time at home. And it is good to have an agent actually that takes care of them and also serves as an intermediator between the patient and the human therapist. So fortunately, we got another project together with Mark Billinghurst from the University of Auckland. He is very well known in the area of augmented reality and virtual reality. This is a project sponsored by New Zealand, but it includes a lot of international partners. So we have two universities from the US, University of Southern California, University of Florida. We have KAIST in Korea, Fraunhofer and us in Germany. And we have Soul Machines in New Zealand who create very realistic looking character. And also interesting here, we look at low resource languages. namely the language of the Maori community. And we focus on young Maori men who are actually at the risk of depression. One project I would like to briefly present is Avasak. We got a follow-up called Bigeko, and it's a character-based sign language translator. We developed it together with DFKI, Technology and Art Sciences in Cologne, and other companies. And so I always find people interested in sign language. That's why I just would like to tell you we are working on this and we are interested in a collaboration. And just to show you what it looks like. And we developed it actually to inform customers about the German train system, and which is unfortunately always delayed. So we really need such an agent for their people. Yeah, and I'm a software person. And when you create virtual agents, you have the chance to have your own agent. So, and until recently, we always bought robotic software. But in the Viva project, we had the chance for the first time to develop software and hardware in parallel. And I just play you an example of the robot. And the tricky thing was actually to make sure that the behavior of the robot, in particular the facial expressions, are synchronized with the behavior of the human. So the robot has to analyze and generate in parallel. So most of the examples are in German, but it does not matter because the research focuses on nonverbal signals, and what you get from our video is actually what the machine actually gets, because only apart from a few examples, we focus on the nonverbal signals. Okay, I'll just play this.
Hi Claude, alles klar bei dir?
Jo, danke. Bei dir?
Danke, alles gut. Willst du was mit mir spielen?
Nee, danke, ich muss noch arbeiten.
Oh, du Armer. Dann viel Erfolg. Ciao.
Ciao.
Okay, just to give you an impression. And as you might have seen, we focus both on analytic AI and generative AI. Just briefly as an explanation. So analytic AI is an automated process that distinguishes between different types of inputs. And the objective is to identify decision boundaries based on the training data. Here, a simple example. What emotions are these persons showing? And the system has to classify that. Generative AI is an automated process that uses algorithms to create, manipulate, or synthesize data. And it creates new data points based on the distribution of training data. And here, a parallel example, create an image of this person showing happiness. And we are working on both. So first, I would like to talk about the analysis of social and affective behaviors. And as you know, we need a lot of data, and the data often needs to be labeled. And to facilitate our task, we developed a tool called NOVA. It stands for Nonverbal Analyzer, but it got more verbal also because we integrated now language models. And the idea is that we distribute the annotation task between a machine and the user. And we make use of active learning to extract the most informative instances from a pool of unlabeled data based on a specific query strategy. So I will just show you a very simple example to illustrate the idea. So here you can see a data set we collected in a European project. So we had conversations between experts and novices. And they were in a conversation, and one person was questioning the other. We have data from Germany, from France and from the UK, and also some data from Chinese speakers. And currently one of my students, master students, is in Japan. He speaks Japanese, he's German but speaks Japanese, and he is collecting a Japanese data set. And let's imagine we are interested in the smiles of the people. And we start by labeling the video to detect the smiles. And these, the yellow parts are actually labels of smiles. The human user actually annotated. And then the human user decides, okay, let's use the labels to train a machine learning model. And we use the machine learning model to label the remaining data. So this could look like this. And here the red bar indicates that the machine actually has a very low confidence that we have a smile here. And then the human human annotator can jump to the video frame. And he can also, or she can also start some explainable AI techniques. For example, here the LIME algorithm. And what you can see here, that the AI obviously focus to label these frames on the background of the image. In that case, it does not make sense to focus on the background if you are looking for smiles. And so this might actually decrease the trust of the labeling person. And then the person might decide, okay, let's remove the label again. That's basically the idea. We used NOVA in a variety of systems, and we are currently running with other faculties in Augsburg a project which aims to develop competences of students through feedback-based digital teaching and learning scenarios. So we got a big department, a medical department in Augsburg, and part of the medical education is to teach the new doctors, or the doctors to become, how to talk to patients. And you can see such a scenario on the left. And this is done together with our chair for medical psychology and sociology, and the chair for medical didactics and educational research. And the colleagues are very proud that they actually hired human actors or actresses to engage in a role play with the students. And before the role play starts, the students get some training or have to read some books, how to do a good conversation with a patient, and then they have to apply it in a real scenario. We started with that, and then we actually, it turned out there was another interesting collaboration with the chair of primary school pedagogy and primary school didactics. And part of the teacher education in Augsburg is to teach the students how to communicate with parents of pupils in their later job, which is really a challenge. And so the questions we analyze here is, does actually the AI help to analyze the students' communication skills? So here we found that AI-based software is quite of benefit. And also the students, actually, they get a score. And if a student is not satisfied with a score, and the student tells us the AI doesn't work, then we have a problem. So it's really a challenging situation. Then we also analyze what actually are the relationships between the AI analysis and the human assessments. For example, the assessments of my colleague in psychology. And also how do the students feel about it. Just to give you an example, I play you a video of a conversation. At the same time, you see the analysis of the NOVA system. And there are various tracks. So, and we can dynamically select the tracks we are interested in. So for example, some people might be interested in the eye contact of the student, others might more interested in the body postures, and I just play it to you. Here we have a conversation about vaccination.
Bereits ein Gespräch mit meiner Kollegin geführt haben. Und ich würde einfach gerne, also ich habe herausgehört, dass es da Befürchtungen wegen der Impfung ihres Sohnes gab. Und ich würde jetzt gerne heute einfach darüber reden, was sie bedrückt, und vielleicht können wir zusammen eine Lösung finden.
Ja, es ist so, wie gesagt, ich hatte das Gespräch schon, es waren aber sehr, sehr viele Infos,
That's the actor or actress.
sind. Und ich weiß einfach nicht, ob das jetzt wirklich der richtige Zeitpunkt ist, weil mein Sohn ist halt erst 3 Monate alt und
And on the left, it was the student.
Andere Wege gibt,
Also just to give you an impression. And I said, okay, NOVA stands for non-verbal analyzer, but of course we also leveraged the advances in large language models. What we do, for example, we analyze, we summarize actually the conversations, which is actually quite effective and saves us a lot of time. So just to tell you, okay, NOVA also leverages the large language models. Now to show you a completely different scenario, namely the teacher conversations. So here you have a father, and the father is not so happy about the school, because the father, as usually, is proud of the son, but the teacher is less enthusiastic about the son. And this is actually, I think, a very difficult situation to cope with for the teacher on the left. You see?
Also erstmal schön, dass wir uns jetzt hier treffen. Ich finde es schon mal gut, dass wir überhaupt uns die Zeit nehmen, die nächsten 5 Minuten, um darüber zu reden.
Ja, Entschuldigung, aber ich verstehe einfach nicht, also zu Hause kann er die Sachen, ja, und dann geht er in die Schule und hat wieder eine schlechte Note. Also irgendwie verstehe ich einfach diesen Unterschied nicht. Also er ist zu Hause sicher in den Dingen, ich frage ihn ab, er kann die Dinge, kaum kommt er in die Schule, jetzt hat er in der Leseprobe wieder nur eine 4. Irgendwas stimmt für mich da
Genau,
nicht.
ich höre da auf jeden Fall.
So even if you don't understand German, so this man is not really pleasant. And for the student, it's a challenge to deal with such a situation. So the last example I would like to show you is quite a different project where we also analyze together with psychotherapists from the University in Munich and Dresden and in Heidelberg, the stress parents have due to the COVID pandemics, and how the stress actually impacts a child development. So we recorded data in different stages during the COVID pandemics, but also after, because there are long-term effects. In this context, it's interesting to look at the mutual regulation model. So small kids have to learn to deal with negative emotions. For example, if the mother or the father is interested in something else and not looking at the child. And it's very important actually to regulate emotions, for example, to look away from negative stimuli and seek comfort. And parents can influence the infant's ability to regulate emotions and recover from frustration. And there's actually an interesting method to evaluate the development or the ability of a child to regulate emotions, which is called the face-to-face still face paradigm, where mother or the father looks away and then pays attention to the child again, and to analyze the emotion regulation processes provide some good indicator about the child's development. And you can just see what it looks like. So we have such a scenario, and our psychologists also developed a specific annotation scheme for analyzing such interactions. So at the end of this part of the talk, I would like to tell you some strategies. Maybe people are also working on emotion recognition. So some strategies we apply to improve the recognition rates. So in one paper, we investigated the potential of a 3D morphable model to capture expressions induced by shape deformations. And the basic idea is to learn 3D face embeddings for 2D images and evaluate the resulting 3D face expressions on standard emotion recognition tasks. The other strategy to improve recognition rates refers to diffusion. So here we investigate how to estimate the uncertainty scores of unimodal inputs to maximize the multimodal fusion performance. And the approach is based on the consideration that the predictive uncertainty of an estimator must be simultaneously both well calibrated and well ranked. And you can see an example here. So when face masking is applied to a video stream, the fusion output relies more on the audio modality. And after removing the face mask, the fusion values adapt accordingly. And this has to happen in real time. I was also mentioning in my abstract that it is important to use actually a cognitive model. So we should not just analyze our data and forget everything cognitive scientists did in the past. And so the third strategy, which I find quite promising, and actually it goes also back to some work Christina Conati did many years ago with Bayesian network, which I really like. So I'm a fan of this paper. And but now let's look at an example. So we work on job interview training, and we recorded people engaging in a job interview, and the interviewer is on the left and the interviewer on the right. She's smiling, and one could assume she is in a positive emotion. And but if we look what the interviewer was saying before we start, a short question: where did you get the outfit? Somehow it doesn't really suit you. And now let's look at one of the best facial expression analyzers, what the system is doing. So it gives very high confidence to the emotion happiness, which does not make sense in such a scenario. And what we do is actually we combine social signal processing with a cognitive model of emotions. So if we look at the scenario, it's a situation, so something bad happens to the person, and a typical person would feel shame. And shame is usually shown by blushing or hiding behind hands. But it's even a little bit more complicated because people regulate emotions, and recognizing regulated emotions is much more difficult than recognizing the original emotions. So obviously, because the person is not blushing, the person might regulate emotions. And what we see here is a sequence of smiles, gaze aversion, and body touches. And so we assume the shame is regulated. And there's a lot of literature on shame, in particular Nathanson, A Compass of Shame, already quite old, but nevertheless useful. And Nathanson describes strategies people apply to regulate shame. So the woman could have said, okay, what a boring company, or the woman could also have said, oh, I'm so sorry, I never know how to dress. But she seems to avoid the situation which is in line with what she is showing. So this is actually, don't forget about the cognitive models you really need to understand also what the machine is doing. Okay, just as a reference, we also organize a number of international challenges. Today I was talking with the students about mediators to actually make sure that a conversation between humans is running well. And we organize a challenge where we actually focus on eye gaze. And the task of the challenge is to predict the next speaker, which might be a very useful information to know for a machine mediator. Okay, I said I will also talk about explaining social behavior analysis. So we did a lot of work on explainable AI, but here I will only focus on one application scenario, namely a job interview training. So here it's quite clear why you need explainable AI. If you have a system and the system tells you when you engage in a job interview, for example, with a virtual agent, okay, you will never get a job, okay, it's not very useful. The people need to know what to do. I just play a video from a system we developed a couple of years ago.
Zuerst möchte ich Sie fragen, wie es Ihnen geht. Sind Sie aufgeregt?
Ja, hallo erstmal, ich bin der Johnny, danke, dass Sie mich hier eingeladen haben zum Interview. Ein bisschen aufgeregt bin ich schon, aber ich glaube,
Schauen Sie sich bitte die folgende Karte an. Können Sie für mich Ihre Stärken beschreiben?
meine größte Stärke ist Teamarbeit. Ich bin eigentlich ein sehr guter Teamspieler.
In dieser Runde waren Sie sehr überzeugend.
So actually, the student got a job after his PhD, so it was effective. Yeah, and here you can see some analysis of the NOVA system. Just two examples. So what is really important in a job interview, remember that you need to appear engaged. So you can maybe appear incompetent or nervous. That's okay to some extent, but appearing disengaged is the worst thing you can do. And so on the left-hand side, we see high engagement. So there is voice activity. Also, the emotion energy is quite high. And the opposite is shown on the right. So the guy is actually crossing arms. So crossing arms is not bad as such. But if you cross your arms and look away, that is actually something you should not do in a job interview. We tested the system in 2 schools in Germany, and these are the results from a school in Augsburg. And they had a conventional job interview training in the school, and there were 2 human career counselors from a career service at Augsburg University, so 20 students. And it took 3 days. On the first day, the students had a mock interview with a human practitioner. On day 2, one group interacted with the training game, and the other group read a book about how to behave in a job interview. And on the third day, they had again an interview with the practitioner. But of course, the practitioner didn't know which group the students were in on the second day. And what we found was actually that the students who had interacted with the virtual job interview trainer were rated significantly better by job trainers than pupils who prepared themselves for the job interview using books. And what we actually were very pleased about, that they appeared significantly less nervous, because this was our actual goal, to make the students feel more confident in a real interview. So you have seen the character, and maybe some of you play computer games, and then you see, okay, I've seen better quality. That was actually also the concern of some of the teachers. They said, we are willing to test your system, but we cannot guarantee for anything. The students might just make fun of the character, but it actually worked. So the teacher said that the students seemed to be highly motivated and able to learn how to improve their behavior. And they also had the feeling, okay, it transports the experience into the youngster's own world. And the students said, surprisingly, the feedback by the machine was more credible than the machine by a human. So what we are currently investigating, where Christina is actually going to help us, is that we would like to leverage counterfactual reasoning for generating a verbal feedback about observed social behavior. And to this end, we use generative adversarial networks. And the basic idea behind counterfactuals is that you present in an explanation people with a hypothetical situation. You say, if that has changed, or if that feature would have a different value, then the AI would come up with a different decision. And of course, the trick is only to focus on the relevant features in that scenario. And we are currently preparing a study to actually compare factuals. For example, okay, you did not pay a sufficient amount of eye gaze versus if you had shown more, or if your body behavior was more lively, you would have appeared more engaged. And finally, the feedback is to be provided by a virtual agent. So we do not just actually help students, we also help teachers and professors like me. And sometimes it's really challenging when you are in a big course and the students actually do something you don't like. And then the question is, what can you do? And we got the idea we could actually provide teachers with a challenging scenario, a school class where the students actually don't do what they do. And the teacher is saying something, and then if the teacher is not showing the right body posture or speaking with the wrong tone, then the students might even behave worse. I just play you an example. So here actually the student is playing with the mobile phone, and the teacher tells him to stop doing that, and the student is not following, just to give you an impression.
Guten Morgen alle zusammen. Also, Alex, würdest du bitte dein Handy weglegen?
Mache ich auf keinen Fall.
Ja, gut, so. Auf jeden Fall bei Synchronität.
Ich gehe jetzt raus.
Ja, bitte. Tschüss. Bis nächstes Mal.
So I have a longer videos, but this should be so first, interestingly, the student, one of the people developing that is, he now joined the company. And when he was doing a PhD with me, sometimes we also had this kind of argument. He's very nice, but he was always trying to challenge me. And at some point I had the feeling he modeled himself. Okay, so now I would like to talk about the generation of behaviors, and I would like, as an example, to focus on voices. And To this end, we came up with a new paradigm in collaboration with our partners from the Max Planck Institute for Empirical Aesthetics. So the idea is that we present people with a stimulus, for example, a painting or a voice, and the people can manipulate the stimulus in order to satisfy a given concept. So we had a paper, for example, where people could modify with a slider a voice to make the voice emotional. And the overall goal of the Max Planck Institute is not a technology. They would like to find out what makes a voice emotional. And then we got the idea, we thought, okay, most speech synthesizers don't match the character or the robot they are designed or used for. And maybe we can apply the approach to such scenarios. And here you can see the instructions for the human user. So adjust the slider to make the voice match the face as best as you can. And several people are doing that in parallel. So imagine all of you get the slider and you do it from your home. And then the machine actually calculates the average. And then you get to the next round. And then you modify the next stimulus. So just to show you like this.
I saw Picotes fighting with ham.
Okay, and now another example. So in the beginning, people get confronted with a face and a randomized voice. So let's listen to it.
Our plans right now are hazy.
So for some reason, this is a bit, it's too short, but you get an idea and it sounds, I would say it sounds male. And then we have the round of people where people actually change voice dimensions, one after the other. And in the end, we get a different voice.
Our plans right now are hazy.
So at least for some reason, only the end is hearable. Another example, so we used actually also paintings. And as I said, this goes in several iterations. So I first play for a face, the first iteration, so the randomized voice. And then you can see how it changes over time.
Smoky fires lack flame and heat. Smoky fires lack flame and heat. Smoky fires lack flame and heat. Smoky fires lack flame and heat.
Smoky fires lack flame and heat.
Smoky fires lack flame and heat. Smoky fires lack flame and heat.
And now for the paintings.
Read verse out loud for pleasure.
The fur of cats goes by many names.
Hang tinsel from both branches.
Poached eggs and tea must suffice.
A dash of pepper spoils beef stew.
She called his name many times.
Eat plants there without luck.
So we did an evaluation, and so we presented the human-in-the-loop approach for generating speech, personalized to a specific face to people from the US because there were more training corpora available for American English. So altogether 180 people. And people actually modified the voices. And we also, a different group of humans had to rate the created voices. And we found that the human raters actually confirmed that the created voices matched the faces. What was actually really well recovered in the voice was the speaker gender. This worked quite well. And the people were consistently moving towards the real voice prototype for the given phase, which is also important. It should improve, so people go through all these iterations, and of course it should converge to some end. And then we got the idea, okay, how to use the approach to make voices for robots. And so one thing is what are the dimensions for robotic voices or robots in general? And obviously mechanical, lifelike, functional, social, there are many more. But just to give you an example, and voice design for robots is actually extremely difficult. There's a very nice paper by Matthew Eilert, and he discussed the first two robots on the slide. So he mentioned Cosmo. This robot was built to be cute, funny, and entertaining. And then there was a shift to an Alexa-style assistant, so the robot changed the function, and there was suddenly a mismatch between the robot's intended function and its voice. The other example he gave was Jibo. And so Jibo, it's a minimalistic robotic interface. And you could say, okay, it should definitely not sound human. Let's give it a synthetic voice. But here is a mismatch between the unnaturalness caused by a poor speech synthesis and the designed unnaturalness that supports a robot personality. So it doesn't help if you have a mechanical looking device and just look for any mechanical speech synthesis. It has to match. And for our robot, actually, I thought the speech synthesis was quite good. And I assumed that our developer was using the a cappella children voices. And when talking to him, he said, no, that was my first attempt. But the a cappella children voices were too natural for our robot. And so my solution was to increase the pitch of a cappella female voice. But this was, of course, done manually. So we used the same architecture and approach we used for the human faces, for the robotic faces. We only had to do some fixes with the GIP sampling approach. So we will present this at CHI. And I will just play you some examples of robots. So the robot on the left, we presented people with a randomized voice, and I will always show you the randomized voice and what people came up in the end.
Time brings us many changes.
Time brings us many changes.
So for some reason, I don't know what happened here, but you only get the last bit, but you get an impression, I guess.
The small red neon lamp went out.
The small red neon lamp went out.
So this looks like an old, calm character. Then here, a mechanical robot.
The tongs lay beside the ice pail.
Tongs lay beside the ice pail.
So the people modified it, so they did not decide to give it a natural voice, but a different mechanical voice.
No hardship seemed to keep him sad.
This is Einstein.
No hardship seemed to keep him sad.
So I think it matches at least the face of Einstein. But when listening to Einstein, actually Einstein is speaking with a different voice. He also speaks a dialect, which is of course not captured here. So unfortunately, the video clips were, I don't know why, shortened, but there is a web page where you can play all the voices for all the robots. And here we had a really large experiment with 1,700 people who actually collectively tuned the robotic voices to match 175 robotic images using that adaptive human-in-the-loop approach. And then participants described the impression of the robot or the matched voice using another human-in-the-loop paradigm for open-ended labeling. Also here, the people consistently converge towards specific voice prototypes that either enhanced or aligned with the attributes associated with the static images of the robots. And overall, the study shows that the interplay between visual and auditory perceptions is really quite important. And we also look at visual channels. So Daxita, one of my PhD students, he works on a real-time neural listening behavior generation approach for socially interactive agents. So because of the collaboration with our psychotherapists, we have a lot of data with psychotherapy sessions, and the therapist should be a good listener. So we got the idea actually to predict therapists' facial listening behaviors based on the patient's audio visual cues. And the training process comprises two main steps: pre-training, a vector quantized variational autoencoder, and training a transformer-based predictor model. And I will show you a video, and you will, in the middle, you will also see an example that shows the limitations of the approach.
We present RenéLib.
I would like to discuss some things with you, if you are willing to listen to me carefully. That right now I'm having some issues with focusing on my work because right after vacation.
So the therapist is not talking.
RenéLib stands for Real-Time Neural Listening Behavior Generation for Socially Interactive Agents.
Several conferences that I'm planning to apply.
Given the multimodal inputs from the interlocutor, RenéLib generates real-time listening facial behaviors for the socially interactive agent, enhancing the interaction's realism.
With Seoul, working with my colleagues, they are very nice and they're very helpful.
A key component of this work is the FLAME, Faces Learned with an Articulated Model and Expressions Model, which plays a pivotal role in generating interlocutor-aware behaviors. FLAME provides highly expressive 3D facial parametric representations, enabling them to learn human-like non-verbal cues such as facial expressions and head movements accurately. Furthermore, we adapt the FLAME-generated outputs to ARKit blend shapes, another parametric representation widely compatible with numerous interactive agent platforms.
But the summer is coming, that's something to be nice and happy about, because the summer is always nice in Germany, right? And yeah, I think that's a positive note. Yeah, so the session is for me to kind of get an idea.
Yeah, I guess you have seen some limitations of the approach already, and I summarize some aspects we still have to work on. So the framework is agnostic to the concrete application scenario, which is on the one hand a good thing, but on the other hand, the generated behaviors might not be appropriate for a specific context. So for example, if you record somebody listening to somebody at a party, and then you develop a character for a therapy session, then there would be probably too many smiles in the scenario. And we also trained a model for a single specific therapist to represent nuanced individual behaviors instead of a model interpolating between different persons. But I think that it's a good approach because otherwise you might result into inconsistencies. We also need to do some smoothing. So at the moment, we did not use any interpolation. That's why the behavior was not all the time quite smooth. But there are actually a lot of application scenarios, including social coaching. So for example, in the teacher scenario, we could map the behavior on an avatar and show the user what he or she looks like when interacting with a specific scenario. The same work actually can also be used, and we are currently preparing a study to augment the user's conversational skills. So there are many people not able to articulate properly. So they need help with speaking, maybe because of an accident, maybe because of a progressive disease. And they use augmentative alternative communication devices. And there are a lot of talkers on the market where people, for example, press a button or activate it via eye tracking. And whatever they select is articulated. But there are very limited options to control the voice. And usually people only have a few options to choose. I mean, during some studies with users using augmentative alternative communication, so there was one girl, and she said, okay, I'm in a class with kids having articulation problems like me. And all kids in my class got the same voice. And then we got the idea, oh, we could actually give everybody an individual voice. And we created voice X. And since most of these people also have motoric difficulties, we decided to keep the interface very simple. So to have two options of voices. Users pick one voice, and then we use an evolutionary algorithm to generate mutations, and then in the next round, users can select their preferences until the voice converges to a fitting voice. So here again, the approach, and in contrast to the previous approach, where a group of users actually designs robotic voices. So here the goal is to find individual speaker embeddings for your own voice and not in collaboration. So we start with two random speaker embeddings. Then we create speech for the two speaker embeddings. We present the two voices to the user. The user selects the better voice. We mutate the corresponding better speaker embedding, and we only keep the better speaker embedding and the mutated one. I have an example here. So we have here the start with two randomized voices.
The zones merge in the central part of town.
The zones merge in the central part of town.
So then user actually picks one of these voices.
It caught its hind paw in a rusty trap.
The zones merge in the central part of town.
And here we have an example, iteration 4, where we get one voice that is not very good after the mutation.
The slang word for raw whiskey is booze. The slang word for raw whiskey is booze.
But nevertheless, it recovers, and in the end, we have...
the barrel of beer was a brew of malt and hops.
This was the final voice for a specific user. The study is currently running. It's a challenge because, you know, the people cannot articulate, and so we have to rely either on caretakers that do the communication, or they use eye trackers, and also the user group is very heterogeneous. And we would like to know, for example, what kind of voice people pick for themselves, a voice that fits, or maybe the voice of an actor or actress they like, or whether they would like to have their family to pick the voices. So finally, I would talk about some ethical issues. So associated with the topic of generative AI. So in May 2023, I actually gave the following prompt, a professor and a student to DALL-E, and I got the following 8 images. And what is maybe not surprising, but so we only got actually male teachers. I tried the same in November, and obviously OpenAI got aware of the problem, but now they really made sure that all the couples, teacher, student, represent a particular ethnic background. And I found this also a little bit odd because they emphasize, okay, this is a teacher with that particular ethnic background, and the teacher is talking to a student with another ethnic background. So it was simply not natural, but it's interesting to analyze what the generative AI is doing. And also for our study with the robots, we actually tried to look at the labels that people gave to the voices and what they actually did. And as you know, probably so many commercial voice assistants use feminine sounding, polite and playful voices by default. There were some complaints about it. And interestingly, our participants tended to use texts like playful and friendly when describing the voices they created for the female robots. And it was also surprising that, for example, the male robots were categorized rather as unemotional, reserved, and the females were characterized as being more emotional. Yeah, I'm nearly finished. And so the UNESCO actually has concerns about it. And one proposal is to avoid gender bias for AI assistants. But this is also debatable. So the question really is, should we exploit or avoid stereotypes? I would say stereotypes do not just have disadvantages. They can help us to simplify and systematize information and make sense of the world. So one idea could be, okay, I don't care. I optimize human-machine interaction by a targeted exploitation of stereotypes. But one could also say I customize it to user preferences. I gave a talk actually in front of the German ethics board. And I said, does it make sense if somebody only has 2 more weeks to live to tell the guy, no, you don't get the voice you like because, you know, it's a stereotype. And so the German ethics board did not kill me for that. But in a later talk, so there was one guy in the audience, he said, oh, you are right. But then somebody else said, no, you should be careful. You should never replicate stereotypes. And you could also say robots are not humans and they should actually get their own voice. And there's an interesting suggestion by Yakesh. He said, you should use an AI accent to keep reminding people that they are dealing with an AI, because people simply forget, even if you tell them it's an AI. So the conclusions. So AI technologies can serve as powerful tools for training and enhancing communication skills. They can also break down communication barriers, as in the case of the voice creation, but also in the case of sign language technology. And they enable us to communicate in a more personalized manner. But of course, we should be aware of stereotypes.
Thank you all for your attentive participations. Your engagement has made this session truly meaningful.
So this was automatically generated. Okay, that's the end of my talk.
Thank you, Elisabeth, for the great talk. So we can open the floor for questions. To make sure that the people on Zoom can also hear the questions, it would be great if you come here and speak in that microphone. Or if you feel really shy, you can like speak your question and I can go and repeat it in the mic. I can also do that for you. So start. Oh, go ahead.
I saw in the work that you were doing with Noah, one of the values on the left was engagement. So I was wondering how that was modeled and how like you got the truth for that, and how what was the process in modeling?
So for that example I showed you, that was from our previous work. And in our previous work, we actually used a classical feature-based approach. So we checked the literature, how is engagement reflected, which also had the advantage that we could explain the result to the user, which is of course very important. And but now we are offering a challenge with the NOXI corpus, the Novitz expert scenario. And one challenge is also engagement. And then people are completely free what to use. And then they also use the deep learning approaches. But of course, the disadvantage is the explainability, but in the challenge, just the performance counts, and so it's okay.
So I have a question in the meanwhile. So you mentioned at some point that you are taking into account, or it's important to take into account the cognitive aspects, not just whatever you can learn from data. To what extent you're still doing it, for instance, in that work that you're showing with the generating the facial expressions for the therapist based on what the patient is saying? To what extent you're because then you mentioned, of course, you don't want to train in a very different context, like in a party, because then what you're getting are behaviors that are not appropriate for the new context. So how do you take the cognitive aspects into account to modulate what's happening with the generation?
Yeah, so that's actually driven by the objectives of the psychotherapists. And in the case of one project, their interest is actually to find out when psychotherapy works and when it does not work. And the underlying hypothesis is actually that it depends not only on the emotions of the patient, but also on the emotions of the therapist. And so basically their measures are nonverbal synchrony, but we don't throw away everything what was ever done in psychology. So they come actually up with a lot of questionnaires that are validated, and they have an interest actually to find correlations between nonverbal signals and the items of questionnaires. So maybe in the future, they will also go deeper into the cognitive models of emotions. We have, together with DFKI, a project with Toyota, and actually they were very enthusiastic about the idea to make use of cognitive models of drivers in the car to consider the traffic situation and combine the cognitive models with the signal analysis.
Questions about voice generation for people who can't use their own voice. It strikes me that what's important is also being able to express their emotions in terms of volume of voice, voice inflection, and tone of voice. Is that currently possible? And if not, what are your thoughts on that?
So actually, the idea is we start from a state-of-the-art speech synthesis architecture called WITS, and we have the embeddings, and when actually manipulating the sliders, we give different weights to the embeddings, and so actually it's not a transparent process. So we of course we have to make sure that people have the possibility, if they want to create a prosodic variations. We also need embeddings to keep the speaker identity. And so we actually integrated a global style tokens to have the possibility with the prosodic variation. In the case of the robotic voices, so we did not just work with embeddings, because as a basis we used again data sets of human voices, and we didn't have robotic voices. And so when you just have human voices and manipulate the dimensions, it's hard to get robotic voices. So we allow the people also to have some specific effects to actually parameterize the metallic, the amount of sounding metallic, for example. So, but so here we had some dimensions that can be understood by humans, but in the voice match or the face matching voices, it's basically manipulating the embeddings.
I also have a question regarding the robot voice. So you mentioned that in the training of the robot voice, the US users actually dominates the training set. I'm just wondering that if different cultural backgrounds would affect their result and also in other aspects. Thank you.
Yeah, a very good question. Cultural aspects are very important, and of course you cannot get more out of it than actually is in the data. So regarding emotion, expression, and culture, so I always do an experiment with students in my class. So I have samples of Chinese in different emotions. My students don't speak any Chinese dialect. And the accuracy rate is actually quite high, just from the Chinese voice. I don't even know whether it's a Mandarin or anything else, but you get a good idea of what the emotion is. But the point is actually the situation. When do people actually show emotions, to what extent? And this is very cultural specific. So depending on whether a culture actually respects authority, or whether a culture actually, so we used in previous work the Hofstede cultural dimensions, and or whether people, for example, as I know the Japanese culture, a lot of things are actually conveyed implicitly. So the Japanese expect, at least that was I was told, that a lot of stuff is conveyed by the context, which means they do not have to provide a direct message, as in cultures that are less context oriented. So I would say for the voices, it's not maybe that strong because it's on expression, but if you use it in a scenario, then culture becomes really very important. And today with the students, we had this interesting discussion on the culture, which is not usually not considered enough in the large language model. So we also have attempts to actually get a German large language models, and the people only speak about language, but they hardly speak about culture. I think that's a really important thing. And I also read that in the future, it was an interview. Actually, I really tried to get the interview and the YouTube because I did not want to spread fake news. But there is somebody, she said, in the near future, 80% of the internet is generated by AI and not generated by humans. And if one culture is more dominant than other cultures, you can imagine what that means, actually.
Yeah, I think there's time for one more question. Yes.
Yeah. So do you consider the possibility that one day we become so used to realistic AI that our attitude towards other human beings might experience a shift? Does that make sense? So for example, we would treat some other human being with less respect because we become so used to dealing with realistic AI that we treat another human as if they're real.
Yeah, also very, very interesting question. I thought about it. So we used a robot and a very accurate eye tracker. And so I could tell the robot, put that there just by gazing. And then when looking at videos of users, so they first started to actually look in a very controlled manner just because they knew, okay, there is that eye tracker. And looking is more convenient than pointing. And of course, I could also imagine, you know, we tend to somehow to imitate people. And we might also tend to imitate a machine when we actually chat with ChatGPT, we might somehow adjust unconsciously how ChatGPT is communicating. I could, so for example, ChatGPT is very, at least I'm German, and for me it sounds very exaggerated, you know, when it is telling me, okay, a fantastic approach and so on. We would not do that in Germany. And but if you always get email messages created by ChatGPT, then you have to at some point you also have to become like this. So if you get maybe more enthusiastic, that might be okay. But if the future is to get, for example, more efficient, then that might be a bad thing. So we will see what happens. But I would think, yeah, you're right. It will definitely influence how we will communicate in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the
Thank you.